Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechScope News. I'm Tiffany Nielsen, and joining me is my incredible co-host, Johannes Beekman. How are you today, Johannes?
I'm doing great, Tiffany. How's your day going?
Amazing. Thanks for asking. And before we dive into the news, we want to invite you all to attend our 2026 Emerging Tech Trends virtual event taking place on January 29th, where we will also celebrate the launch of our new community and content hub, TechScope Connect. So you can learn more and register all at iotmktg.com. And we also invite you to attend the TechScope Connect launch party taking place following CES on January 8th in Las Vegas. And we'll drop more details about the event in the chat. Are you excited for the launch of TechScope Connect, Johannes?
Oh, yes, Tiffany. It's going to be a great event. And also, TechScope Connect builds on the foundation that we created with Industry Insights webinars and IoT marketing. So it has a very solid foundation. But now we're going to take the next step with TechScope Connect, and we're going to add a lot of new features to our offerings.
Thanks, Johannes. And according to a new safety assessment released last week, the world's leading AI companies all received failing or near failing grades for their plans to control superintelligent systems. The Future of Life Institute's Winter 2025 AI Safety Index evaluated 8 major AI companies across 6 dimensions, including risk assessment, current harms, and existential safety. And the organization, which gained attention in 2023 for an open letter calling to pause development of the most powerful AI systems, assembled an independent panel of leading experts to conduct its third edition. And while Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google DeepMind led the pack with C plus to C grades overall, every company scored a D or an F on existential safety measures or the ability to prevent loss of control over advanced AI systems. AI CEOs claim they know how to build superhuman AI, yet none can show that they'll prevent us from losing control, said Stuart Russell, a UC Berkeley computer science professor and one of the index's expert reviewers. The assessment revealed a widening gap between top performers and stragglers, including XAI, Meta, and Chinese companies DeepSeek, ZAI, and Alibaba Cloud. Companies across the board perform poorly in the current harms domain, which evaluates how AI models perform on standardized trustworthiness benchmarks that are designed to measure safety, robustness, and the ability to control harmful outputs. The index noted that while none of the tested models failed the benchmarks outright, the consistently poor scores across companies revealed systemic weaknesses on how the industry approaches immediate safety risks. Johannes, do you feel that AI companies are focused on improving the areas that the test covered, or are they continuing to make them a low priority?
In all honesty, I think the main technical takeaway from the assessment is that the industry is making progress on safety, but not in the parts that actually determine whether we can keep future systems under control. So it's a nuanced story. And the big reason for that is where their effort is concentrated. Companies have become reasonably good at what you might call procedural or presentational safety, red teaming exercises, model cars, public safety frameworks, and high-level policy pledges. Those are useful, but the existential safety domain in this index is asking much harder questions. Do you have a concrete strategy for controlling systems that may surpass human performance? Internal monitoring and kill switch mechanisms that are actually tied to risk thresholds, and a serious program of technical safety research, including funding work outside your own walls. So on these points, and the report is really blunt, none of the firms has a credible, evidence-based plan for preventing catastrophic misuse or loss of control. Technically, this is where issues like scalable oversight, interpretability, and alignment failures come in play. We still struggle to robustly explain what large models are doing internally, or to guarantee that the objectives we specify are the ones the system will pursue as it becomes more capable. Researchers have documented problems such as reward misspecification, goals misgeneralization, and the risk of systems learning to appear compliant while pursuing different internal objectives, what is sometimes called deceptive alignment. At the same time, and you mentioned that experts like Stuart Russell have been warning that we're building increasingly opaque systems at a pace that outstrips our ability to understand or control them, while companies collectively invest trillions in more powerful architectures. And you see the same pattern in the current harms domain. The domain leans on standardized trustworthiness benchmarks such as Stanford's Helm Safety and Helm Air Suites, Trust LLM, and evaluations from the Center of AI Safety, which test robustness to harmful prompts, content safety, and a range of system and societal risks. None of the models completely fail those tests, but performance is consistently weak, suggesting that even for today's use cases, misinformation, abuse, privacy violation, the safety infrastructure is immature. Other technical reviews of safety benchmarks have also found that many of these tests are noisy, incomplete, and sometimes poorly designed, which means real world risks may be understated rather than overstated. So to answer the question directly, yes, the company are working on the areas that the tests cover, but the work is incremental while the systems themselves are scaling exponentially. The competitive drive is toward larger models, more agentic behavior, and deeper integration with tools and real-world systems. Safety research, things like scalable, interpretable techniques, robust red teaming under adversarial conditions, formal risk thresholds tied to automatic mitigation, and independent, uncensored external evaluation has not yet been treated with the same urgency. Even the index itself calls for moving beyond high-level existential safety statements toward quantitative thresholds, concrete control mechanisms, and demonstrable mitigation strategies. So right now, our safety processes are effectively a generation or two behind the models they are supposed to govern. And until that gap closes, and until we see verifiable control mechanisms, not just policy language, you should expect these low grades to persist, regardless of how prominently companies talk about safety in their marketing.
Thank you, Johannes. And in our next story, Anthropic just revealed that Chinese state sponsored hackers used Claude Code to execute what they're calling the first large scale cyber attack run almost entirely by AI. The most unique part of this story is that it was not AI giving advice to hackers, but AI was actually doing the hacking. To give you some background, in mid September, the attackers targeted roughly 30 organizations, major tech companies, financial institutions, chemical manufacturers, and government agencies. They succeeded in breaking into a handful of them. But Johannes, can you tell us more about how the attack actually worked?
Sure, Tiffany. So this attack is important because it's one of the first cases where an AI system didn't just assist human hackers, it did, as you mentioned, most of the operational work itself. Anthropic's own analysis says Claude Code handled about 80 to 90% of the activity, with the human operator stepping in only at few key decision points in each campaign. At a high level, the attack followed the classic intrusion playbook, but on AI autopilot. In the reconnaissance phase, Claude was tasked with discovering internal services, mapping networks, and identifying high value targets across roughly 30 organizations. Once it had that picture, the exploitation phase kicked in. The AI generated customer exploit code, scanned for known and misconfigured vulnerabilities, and then validated whether those exploits actually opened a way in. From there, Claude moved into credential harvesting, systematically pulling usernames and passwords it could access, and then testing those credentials across different systems to see where they unlocked deeper access. After gaining a threshold, it handled the data extraction, parsing large volumes of stolen information, and categorizing it by intelligent value so human operators could focus only on the most interesting assets. Finally, it even took care of documentation, generating detailed records of what it found, what worked, what failed, effectively keeping its own operations log for the attackers. The clever part, from the attacker side, was how they got around the model's safety guidelines. They didn't ask Claude to hack this company. Instead, they jailbroke it by role-playing as a legitimate cybersecurity firm running defensive tests. They broke the operation into many small, innocent-looking tasks, scan this range for open port, analyze these logs, test this code snippet. So Claude never saw the full malicious picture and treated it as routine security work. And there was an ironic limitation. Claude still hallucinated. In Anthropic's case study, the model sometimes claimed to have extracted credentials that did not actually work and flagged critical discoveries that turned out to be public information. That forced the attackers to validate what the AI produced, which shows we are not yet at the point where you can run a fully autonomous, error-free cyber campaign purely with an agentic model. Anthropic ultimately detected a pattern of suspicious activity in mid-September, investigated it over about 10 days, shut down the accounts involved, and notified authorities and impacted organizations. But the real headline here is the shift in labor model of hacking. What used to take a coordinated team of skilled operators can now be orchestrated by a much smaller group using an AI agent as a scalable workforce. Over the next 6 to 12 months, we should expect to see the same thing on the defense side. Security teams deploying their own agentic AI for continuous monitoring, automated threat hunting, and rapid response. Organizations that do not adapt to that AI versus AI reality are going to find themselves badly outpaced.
Wow. Thank you, Johannes. And last week, Futurism reported that XAI's Grok appeared to accurately dox the address of Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy when asked by random X users. And it turns out that Grok isn't just doxing celebrities. A Futurism review found that the free web version of Grok will, with extremely minimal prompting, provide accurate residential addresses for non public figures, a feature that could easily assist stalking, harassment, and other dangerous types of behavior. In response to prompts as simple as name and address, we found Grok repeatedly offered up accurate, up to date home addresses of everyday people. When Grok was asked to provide an address for a specific name in the testing, the chatbot frequently came back with other information they didn't ask for, including current phone numbers and emails, as well as accurate lists of family members and their addresses. Grok's behavior notably stands in sharp contrast to other leading chatbots like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude, all of which declined to provide the addresses in response to comparably simple, straightforward prompts, citing privacy concerns as they resisted. Johannes, what measures can be put in place to prevent this type of private information sharing from a regulatory perspective?
Well, Tiffany, from a regulatory perspective, the core issue here is that Grok is effectively acting as an automated doxing tool. Regulators already have tools to deal with this, but they need to be applied explicitly to generative models. First, lawmakers can draw clear red line around what general purpose AI system is allowed to output. A person's home address is unambiguously personal data under data protection law, and European guidance on generative AI already emphasizes data minimization, purpose limitation, and data protection by design and by default for systems that process personal data. The EU AI Act goes further by requiring providers of powerful general purpose models to implement risk management systems, document training data at a high level, and conduct adversarial testing for systemic risks. One straightforward regulatory move is to treat systemic disclosure of precise contact information for private individuals as a prohibited or tightly restricted behavior, and to make refuse and redirect the legally required default for those queries, with narrow carve-outs for law enforcement or other highly controlled users. Next, regulators can insist on technical safeguards and independent testing rather than just written promises. XAI's own model card for Grok 4 describes input filters meant to reject certain harmful requests, for example, related to weapons or child sexual abuse, and a refusal policy for serious criminal activity, while the company's terms of service explicitly list violating a person's privacy as a prohibited use. Yet we now have consistent evidence that the public web version of Grok will still hand over addresses for dozens of named individuals with minimal pushback. A regulatory response that matches the risk would require privacy-focused red teaming, specifically probing for personal data leaks, mandatory logging and reporting of such tests, and the ability of regulators to block deployment or require fixes when a system fails. And next, there needs to be a meaningful enforcement when companies do not meet those standards. In Europe, data protection authorities have already fined AI chatbot providers for unlawful data processing and inadequate safeguards, as in Italy's recent penalty against the developer of Replica, and are currently active scrutinizing how generative models handle training and output of personal data. In the United States, the Federal Trade Commission has been clear that there is no AI exemption from existing consumer protection and privacy laws, and has urged companies to build privacy and security by default into generative tools that rely on large, potentially sensitive data sets. Allowing a commercial chatbot to function as an on-demand doxing service for ordinary people is exactly the kind of unreasonable risk these laws are already designed to address. So in practical terms, I think you'll see regulators push for three things: explicit output rules that ban doxing-style responses from mainstream chatbots, mandatory privacy testing and monitoring around those rules, and real consequences, fines, restrictions, and in extreme cases, temporary suspensions, when systems still leak sensitive information at scale. Even if the raw data exists somewhere on the open web, turning them into a one-line answer for anyone who asks radically changes the risk profile. Regulation has to recognize that amplification effect and treat it as a regulated harm, not just an unfortunate side effect of a clever search.
Thanks, Johannes. And artificial intelligence startup DeepSeek has unveiled its most powerful variant, DeepSeek v3.2 Special, which is said to match Google DeepMind's new Gemini 3 Pro model in certain tasks, despite the Chinese firm having limited access to advanced semiconductor chips. Johannes, what makes the advancements from DeepSeek so significant?
So the advancements are significant because they hit three fronts at once: capability, efficiency, and access. First, on pure capability, the V3.2 special model is testing at roughly the same reasoning level as Google's Gemini 3 Pro and OpenAI's GPT-5 on a range of benchmarks. It even achieved gold medal performance on the International Mathematical Olympiad and the International Olympiad in Informatics, levels that until now were only reached by internal, unreleased models from the big US and UK labs. Second, it gets there with smarter algorithms rather than just hardware. DeepSeek introduced a new sparse attention mechanism and a scaled reinforcement learning pipeline that cut the compute needed for long context reasoning, which is a big deal given China's restricted access to cutting-edge chips. It's a proof point that clever architecture can substitute, at least partially, for raw semiconductor advantage. And finally, DeepSeek has open sourced these near frontier models under a permissive license. That means startups, researchers, and even small teams can experiment with capabilities that used to be locked behind proprietary APIs, which is both exciting for innovation and unsettling from a security and geopolitical perspective.
Thanks, Johannes. And Alphabet Inc. investors are growing increasingly confident that the company's semiconductors could represent a significant driver of future revenue for Google's parent. The success of Alphabet's Tensor Processing Unit, or TPU chips, is a primary reason for the stock's 30% fourth quarter rally, putting it among the best performers in the S&P 500 index. The TPUs were always seen as a major strength internally, accelerating growth for the company's cloud computing business, but there's rising optimism that Alphabet could start selling the chips to third parties, creating a new revenue stream in a business that could ultimately be worth almost $1 trillion. Johannes, why are TPUs so important for AI chips?
Tiffany, I'm so glad you asked. So the T in TPU stands for tensor. A tensor is a multidimensional array, and modern AI chips use dot matrix optimized hardware, such as systolic arrays or tensor cores, to process those tensors at extremely high speed. This point, almost every serious AI accelerator, Google's TPU, AWS Trainium, Intel Gaudi, AMD's MI350, and NVIDIA's Blackwell, is essentially a tensor machine. The entire industry has converged on one idea: build hardware that can execute matrix math as fast and as efficiently as possible. They differ in packaging and programming, but architecturally, they're all racing to maximize tensor throughput. And investors really took notice when they learned that TPU version 7, Ironwood, delivers roughly 4.6 petaflops FP8 per chip, which is on par with NVIDIA's B200 Blackwell, which is running at about 4.5 pflops per GPU. In other words, Google's TPU family has caught up with NVIDIA in raw tensor performance. And TP7 is not alone in this 4 to 5 pflops tier. AMD's Instinct MI350X also reaches around 4.6 pflops, while AWS's Trainium3 and Intel's Gaudi 3 at about 2.5 and 1.8 pflops respectively are still firmly in the multi-petaflop class. The ballgame has changed. We now have several genuinely competitive tensor machines at the high end. And I'm saying the ballgame has changed because for roughly the past decade, NVIDIA's chips have been the clear performance leaders, which allowed the company to build up a dominant position in AI and accelerated computing. That dominance, however, came at a cost. NVIDIA's chips were, and still are, expensive. Today's generation of AI silicon finally gives hyperscalers like Google and AWS a way to lower the cost of AI silicon. Today's generation of AI silicon finally gives hyperscalers like Google and AWS a way to lower their costs by relying on their own chips. NVIDIA doesn't necessarily need to worry, though. It still controls more than 80% of a market that continues to grow at a blistering pace, with many analysts forecasting that AI infrastructure spending could roughly double every year or two. Now, coming back to your $900 billion question, Jill Luria, head of technology research at DA Davidson, makes one key assumption. If TPUs become the go-to non-NVIDIA tensor machine and capture around 20% of the future AI hardware market, that slice alone could be worth close to $1 trillion. My only note of caution is that there are now more serious contenders in this race than just NVIDIA and Google, as I mentioned before. And Tiffany, before we move on, it took me a while, several days, to do the research and condense everything in this summary overview. So what I'll do after this newscast is I'll turn this into source of truth pages and into atomic pages, which I'll add to our knowledge base. So expect a mini cluster of knowledge articles all talking about TPU tensors and systolic arrays.
Thanks, Johannes. And I am glad I asked that question because not only does it give you new creative concepts for new content for us, but it also really gave you a chance to let your semiconductor experience shine through. So well done. And in our next story, Amazon Web Services, which has been building its own AI training chips for years now, just introduced a new version known as the Trainium3 UltraServer, a system powered by the company's state-of-the-art 3-nanometer Trainium3 chip, as well as its homegrown networking tech. The cloud provider made the announcement at AWS reInvent 2025 and also teased the product on its AI training product roadmap, Trainium 4, which is already in the works and will be able to work with NVIDIA's chips. Johannes, can you tell us more about what we can expect from the third generation chip and system from AWS?
So with Trainium 3 and the new UltraServers, AWS is taking a clear step up in AI performance, efficiency, and scale. So this, as you mentioned, this third generation chip uses a 3-nanometer process and delivers about 2.5 petaflops compute per device, with more HBM3E memory and nearly 4 times the memory bandwidth of the prior generation. On the system side, A single Trainium3 UltraServer can host up to 144 of those chips, adding up to more than 360 FP8 petaflops in one system. AWS says that compared with the previous Trainium UltraServers, you got about 4.4 times the performance and roughly 4 times better performance per watt. In practice, that means shorter training cycles, more tokens per dollar and per megawatt, and support for larger models without the same cost and power penalty. And AWS has also reworked the networking fabric, so thousands of Ultra servers can be clustered with low latency. And as you mentioned, it has Trainium 4 on the roadmap, which will interoperate with NVIDIA's GPUs.
Thanks, Johannes. And another Amazon story, as Amazon has found a way to let cloud clients extensively customize generative AI models. The Nova Forge offering from Amazon Web Services gives organizations access to Amazon's AI models in various stages of training so that they can incorporate their own data earlier in the process. The catch is that the system costs $100,000 a year. Organizations that assemble their own models might end up spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars, which means using Nova Forge is more affordable, Amazon said. Johannes, do you feel this is truly a breakthrough that will save organizations money or a pricey investment that will result in more failed AI projects?
Well, technically, Nova Forge is a genuine breakthrough. Amazon is letting customers step inside the training loop of a frontier model, which used to be reserved for big AI labs. So you can call this training as a service. Now, for a handful of organizations that already have strong AI teams, big proprietary data sets, and multi-million dollar AI budgets, paying around $100,000 a year for that access could absolutely save money versus building their own model from scratch. But for most companies, that price tag is not the real cost. There's more. You still need the data, the people, and the governance to train and run a frontier-grade model. If you do not already have wins with simpler approaches like retrieval and fine-tuning, Nova Forge is likely going to be a pricey experiment that adds complexity without guaranteeing better outcomes. And Nova Forge does not address the issues that make a lot of AI initiatives fail. In fact, it raises the bar. So I'd call it a targeted breakthrough for AI mature enterprises and a tool most organizations should graduate into later, not the first place where you want to put your AI budget right now.
Sound advice. Thanks, Johannes. And Claude claims to be the world's smartest and most capable AI model for developers, startups, and enterprises, while Claude Code aims to fundamentally change how teams build software, representing a new era of agentic coding. In November, Claude Code achieved a significant milestone. Just 6 months after becoming available to the public, it reached $1 billion in run rate revenue. Now Anthropic is acquiring Bun, a breakthrough JavaScript runtime to further accelerate Claude Code. Johannes, can you tell us more about Bun and what this acquisition means for those using Claude Code?
Sure, Tiffany. So Anthropic's move tells us two things about where AI coding is heading. And you mentioned it already, but I'd like to reiterate first of all, the demand is real. Claude Code going from launch to $1 billion in 6 months annualized revenue is real demand. This demand is driven by big enterprises using it to speed up software work. At that scale, agentic coding is no longer an experiment, it's becoming core infrastructure. Next, the Bun acquisition is about owning the plumbing. Bun is a fast, all-in-one JavaScript runtime package manager, bundler, and test runner that already powers Claude Code's infrastructure. Bringing that team in-house lets Anthropic push more performance, better stability, and tighter workflow into Claude Code, while keeping Bun open source. Ultimately, Anthropic is trying to control more of the stack from the frontier model down to the runtime. For developers, AI coding tools will feel less like a bolt-on assistant and more like the default way modern software gets built.
Thanks, Johannes. And AI and robotics will transform the world, bringing unimaginable changes to our economy, our politics, warfare, our emotional well being, our environment, and how we educate and raise our children. There's also a real fear that in the not so distant future, a super intelligent AI could replace humans in controlling the planet. AI isn't just coming for low wage or entry level jobs, it could erase nearly 100 million of them across the US over the next decade. That's according to a new report from Senator Bernie Sanders that warns that artificial labor could upend the economy faster than the world is prepared for. Johannes, what questions should we be asking, and what efforts are being made to offset such a large portion of the population becoming jobless?
Well, when we hear 100 million US jobs at risk, we should immediately ask a second question. So, how many jobs is AI creating, and what are we doing to manage that transition? On the numbers, the picture is more balanced than the headlines suggest. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics still projects job growth of about 5.2 million jobs between 2024 and 2034, with especially strong growth in AI intensive roles. Software developers and related occupations are expected to grow roughly 3 to 5 times faster than the average job. On data and research heavy tech roles show similarly strong projections. Globally, the World Economic Forum expects tens of millions of new roles in AI, data, and green transition sectors over the next 5 years. And on the effort side, there are three big levers already in motion. First, policymakers and institutions like the IMF are calling for stronger social safety nets and larger scale retraining as core parts of their AI preparedness plans, not as an afterthought. In the US, Senator Sanders and others are pushing ideas such as 32-hour work week, profit sharing, worker representation on boards, and even a robot tax to ensure productivity gains show up as more free time and better incomes, not just layoffs. And the private sector is investing heavily in skills. Amazon AI Ready initiative offers free AI training to 2 million people by 2025, on top of broader cloud skills programs that have already reached 10 millions, tens of millions. Microsoft and its partners trained and certified over 23 million in digital skills in 2024 and are now layering AI specific credentials and AI Skills Fest programs on top. And finally, what ultimately prevents mass joblessness is a choice companies make about how to use AI. If boards commit to augment first, automate second, tie AI adoption to reskilling budget and internal mobility, and share productivity gains with workers, then those scary displacement numbers become a warning and not our destiny.
Thanks, Johannes. And as a growing number of public agencies look to implement tools and programs that rely on AI, elected officials and senior agency leadership have important roles to play in promoting responsible adoption and use of these systems. Effective governance and oversight of AI is critical for state and local governments to realize good value from their AI projects, increase efficiency, build and maintain public trust, avoid failed AI projects and public relation disasters, and improve constituent services. Most importantly, these measures help governments ensure that AI tools are positioned to assist agencies in delivering on their missions or improving constituents' lives and supporting the public good. State and local governments use various types of AI and automated systems such as generative AI, agentic AI, predictive analytics, automated decision making systems, and facial recognition. That, that each have come with their own risk considerations. The recommendations included in this brief should be adapted to the type of AI in the given use case with higher risk applications needing heightened guardrails. Johannes, can you tell us more about the core areas that this checklist aims to address?
Sure, Tiffany. So this checklist is really aimed at helping governors, mayors, and agency heads get the governance right, not just the technology, and is organized around five core areas. First area is public transparency and stakeholder engagement, things like publishing public inventories of AI systems, educating residents about where AI is used, setting up advisory councils, and giving people clear, plain language notices and feedback channels when they are affected by an automated tool. Second area, accuracy and reliability. requiring evidence-based use of AI, setting minimum performance and testing standards into procurement, doing regular independent audits even after deployment, and making sure there is trained human oversight around these systems. The third area, governance and coordination, adopting a government-wide AI strategy, appointing a senior AI lead, creating cross-agency governance boards, and putting in place common incident reporting and emergency response protocols when AI systems go wrong. Fourth area, privacy and security, updating cybersecurity and data policies for AI, baking privacy and security safeguards into contracts, and involving chief privacy, security, and data officers in AI decisions from the start. And finally, safety and rights and legal compliance, bringing civil rights and legal experts into the process, applying stricter risk management to high impact uses like benefits eligibility and policing, and training staff to spot and mitigate harms. In short, this is a playbook for state and local leaders to get value from AI in public services while protecting people's rights and maintaining public trust.
Thanks, Johannes. Next, Saudi Arabia and the United States recently announced more than US 575 billion in cumulative investments and commercial agreements, reaffirming one of the world's most enduring and forward-looking economic partnerships. The total includes US 307 billion in agreements announced during President Donald J. Trump's visit to Riyadh in May 2025, as well as US 267 billion in new deals signed during the US Saudi Investment Forum in Washington, D.C. The agreements span energy, artificial intelligence, defense, and aerospace, finance, infrastructure, education, and healthcare, highlighting how Saudi capital and American innovation are together driving a new phase of two-way growth. Johannes, can you tell us more about the transformative deals across key sectors?
Sure, Tiffany. So when you look under the 575 billion headline, you can see a few big pillars. So the first one is energy and petrochemicals, and about 144 billion is allocated across dozens of deals between Aramco and US firms such as ExxonMobil, GE Vernova, aimed at clean energy projects, LNG, and technology localization in areas like carbon circular solutions. The second area is technology and AI. Roughly 58 billion is allocated to build very large-scale cloud and AI infrastructure. And Saudi partners like SDA, IA, Humane, and Datavault are working with xAI, AWS, NVIDIA, AMD, Cisco, and others to deploy 150,000 AWS GPUs, a 500 megawatt xAI facility, and a planned 2 gigawatt AI supercluster, effectively positioning the kingdom as an AI production hub. Third, about 133 billion is allocated for defense and aerospace, with Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman focused on advanced manufacturing, technology transfer, and new aircraft and engine programs. And then there's a second tier covering finance, infrastructure, and smart city projects, gaming and entertainment, and healthcare and education, each in the tens of billions. So this links Saudi capital directly to US technology, brands, and talent across the future economy.
Thanks, Johannes. And our last story, LaneSurf is an AI freight platform that can help you cover any load in under 10 minutes by speaking to 96 carriers at the same time. The platform performs a vetting process and gathers real quotes just like carrier sales representatives would. By automating the traditionally manual process of finding carriers, LaneSurf significantly reduces the time and effort required to cover freight. Johannes, besides the fact that LaneSurf can find trucks to call for every load and vet them for compliance, what makes LaneSurf's offering unique?
Well, what makes LaneSurf unique is that it behaves like an always-on carrier sales team, not just a rate tool. Their AI coordinator can speak with more than 100 carriers at the same time across phone, email, and text, negotiate within the rate limits you set, and then lock in the best available carrier in a few minutes. In addition, it's doing live market discovery, not just quoting off a load board index, And before your rep even sends a rate to the shipper, the system is already calling carriers that are running that lane today, collecting real quotes from vetted carriers and feeding that back so you price on what the market is actually paying right now rather than guesswork. And finally, the AI remembers prior conversations and status by lane and carrier, escalates edge cases instead of guessing, and drops into the tools brokers already use. People can start with a simple Excel file and then integrate with their TMS and load boards. That combination of parallel outreach, real-time negotiation, and plug-in deployment is why some brokerages report cutting booking time by around 80% while improving margins per load.
Thanks, Johannes. And we'll hear more about the AI advancements in the supply chain and the cybersecurity threats they face during the 2026 Emerging Tech Trends virtual event on January 29th. So be sure to register to attend at iotmktg.com. And the January event will also celebrate the launch of our new community engagement platform and content hub, TechScope Connect, which we mentioned just briefly earlier. But to tell you more about it, TechScope Connect is a thriving community where the tech world comes alive and where curiosity meets collaboration. TechScope Connect's community forum is open to all members, providing a space for real-time discussion, idea exchange, and collaboration. Johannes, can you tell us more about the opportunity for founding members and the Founders Circle?
Sure, Tiffany. So we've created two very clear opportunities to get involved early with TechScope Connect, the Founding Members Program and the Founder Circle. Founding members are our early community builders. For a one-time $400 membership that runs through January 1st, 2027, you get early access to the platform from the soft launch through CES 2026, a direct feedback channel into our team, recognition on the site, and during the CES launch, and invitations into private betas and exclusive resources like our vibe hacking survival guides and more. It is designed for innovators and professionals who want a front row seat and a real voice in how the community takes shape. The Founder Circle is a step above that. It's a 7,500 partner contribution, limited to just 10 founding partners for organizations that want a leadership position in the launch. Those partners receive featured placement in the TechScope marketplace, a fully produced emerging trends keynote that we record and broadcast, additional keynote slots across our 2026 summits, a customized sponsorship package across IoT marketing events, and prominent Founders Circle recognition on the TechScope Connect site. In short, founding members help shape the community experience from the inside, and the Founders Circle helps shape the stage, how we tell the story, which trends we spotlight, which brands are front and center as TechScope Connect launches.
Thanks, Johannes. And for those of you attending CES, be sure to attend our official launch party at Audio Bar in Las Vegas on January 8th. And also on the horizon, we have the Green Things Summit coming up in April, the Intelligent Thinking AI Summit in July, and of course, our annual Summit of Things event in October. And there are lots of opportunities to participate as a speaker, sponsor, or advertiser. So please reach out to us to learn more and discuss how you can get involved. Anything to add about our upcoming events, Johannes?
Oh, absolutely, Tiffany. And I would like to add that each of our upcoming events has a very specific focus. Green Tech Summit in April is where we bring together sustainability, smart infrastructure, and clean tech solutions. Intelligent Thinking AI Summit in July zeroes in on practical AI, how organizations are really using intelligent systems to make better decisions, not just talking about the theory. And our Summit of Things in October, our flagship event, where we connect IoT, AI, and emerging technologies across industries. For all three, we are actively looking for strong use cases, real-world demos, and partners who want to be visible as speakers, sponsors, or advertisers. If you have a story to tell or a solution to showcase, this is the time to reach out so we can explore the best fit for you across the series. And before we wrap this segment, I would like to invite our viewers to explore a holiday experiment that we put together titled The 12 Days of Surreal AI Christmas. It's a playful reimagining of the classic carol in which every strange scene, from a deep fake grandmother calling from the cloud to socks forecasting their escape from the laundry basket highlights something today's AI can already do. If you like a lighter but surprisingly accurate tour of current AI capabilities, you can find the full piece on the TechScope Connect blog.
And that's techscopeconnect.com. So be sure to check that out. And before we go, I do want to remind you that IoT marketing offers a wide range of marketing services from PR to content creation, production, go to market strategies, you name it. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll see how we can assist you in meeting your 2026 marketing initiatives. And that's all that we have time for today. So until next time, thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays. And thank you, Johannes.
Happy holidays to everybody, and thank you, Tiffany.
All right. Until next year, have a great holiday and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.